Hello. Hi, guys. How's everybody doing? Tuesday evening, 7 o'clock. We're live again on Facebook groups. Hope you guys are doing well. And hope everyone's had a good week so far. I'm excited to get started today. We have some good questions, and summer's about to end. Kids started school yesterday, so just been running around and you know, all the stuff around the kids. How about you guys? How's everyone doing? How's everyone's summer, end of summer? What's been going on? Everyone's kids back to school. Put in the comments. Let me know if you're excited when your kids go back to school. I don't mind having my kids home, but it's just I feel like I'm always thrown off. I'm thrown off my schedule. I'm thrown off, everything that's like set in place. I'm a very organized person, and it just feels like in the summer everything is off, schedules are off, my meal times are off, their meal times are off. So it's nice to have them go back to school and everybody get back on a regular routine. And so, yeah, put in the comments, how do you guys feel about summer ending? How do you feel about your kids going back to school? And if you guys like it or enjoy it, I'm actually drinking. You see, usually when I drink, it's rosemary. Just I put rosemary flakes in there in hot water. But today I put some passion flower tea, a tea bag of passion flower, because I have not been sleeping well. The last 2 nights, I have been waking up and haven't slept as usually as, I sleep through the night for the most part. And I just haven't slept that good. So I decided I was going to have some passion flower fruit tea and see, because it helps with my sleep. Um, anyways, let's get started. I see a couple people are on, and you know, if you are new to us and you're new to joining these Facebook Lives, I've been doing them for quite a while now. They're really just for educational purposes to really help kind of navigate this whole chronic illness, debilitating phase of our lives that most people tend to go through. I was there a few years ago, completely debilitated, very sick, and maybe 20 different doctors couldn't find my cause of my illness, and they kept just showing me blood work that looked perfect, everything looked great. And so I went on this long journey to search and heal myself. And luckily I had been dabbling in the principles of functional medicine for over 15 years, and I kind of knew where to start and what to do. And so that's kind of how this whole group birthed and came about. And so again, just a disclaimer, this is not to substitute for medical advice. This is really truly just educational purposes. A lot of my journey and explanation of kind of what I went through and what I did, and really just to put a forum and a space for people to feel safe and ask questions and realize they have other people just like them and they're going through the same stuff. So really not a medical advice forum and not to be substituted for medical advice. But if you're new, please go back and watch the other live videos first. I'm not just saying that, it's just it'll give you a foundation. We started from the very, very basics of where to start and what to do to start healing yourself when you're really ill, and then to kind of work your way up. And now we get all sorts of questions that are really advanced and things like that. Today we're talking a lot about mitochondrial health, which is definitely much more advanced than some of the basic stuff. So go back, watch the videos first. They're pinned to the top of the group. And also pinned to the top of the group is the 10 steps guide. A few of you guys had asked me a few months ago to come out with the 10 steps, the basic things that I had done to heal myself. And so I started from the very beginning, exactly what I did. The 10 steps guide is what we used, is what I put together. And that's also pinned to the top of the page. Other than that, let's get started. So David asks, I'm still thinking about your post from the other day about high estrogen levels and reduced bile flow. Did I recall rightly? If so, could you elaborate a little on what you learned on this topic? So yes, I was listening to a podcast, and then the next day I did my 5th module for my functional medicine practitioner program, and they had discussions about, estrogen really decreasing bile flow. And so David wants me to elaborate on that a little bit. So estrogen increases the amount of cholesterol relative to bile salts in your bile, and it increases the saturation of bile with cholesterol, which leads to cholesterol crystal formation. Estrogen also alters the bile acid composition, increasing the chance of gallstone formation. Estrogen therapy. So if you're doing the pill or BHRT or anything like that, but mainly the pill because it has to make 2 passes, estrogen therapy has been associated with an increased incidence of gallbladder disease in both sexes. So I will put in the comments links to a couple of PubMed and NCBI articles and studies that they had done to kind of show these things. But estrogen has been associated with increased incidence of gallbladder disease in both sexes, male and female, and further increased progesterone levels have been implicated in impairment of gallbladder motility in pregnancy. And I really think I had that issue because I had a lot of gallbladder pain in my pregnancy. All 3. It was unbearable. Postmenopausal estrogen therapy was associated with increased risk of gallstone disease in current and former estrogen users. Use of unopposed estrogen was associated with higher risk of the use of estrogen opposed by progestin, finding the needs to be confirmed and explored further. So basically what that just means, all of that, and if you look at these PubMed articles and the NCBI article, the NIH article that I'll put the links to, just increasing too much estrogen, especially if it's unopposed with progesterone, increases gallstone disease and the risk for gallstones. So I can tell you that from my experience in my 3 pregnancies, and I was not sick at the time, had severe right upper quadrant pain. The first time I ended up getting $1 million workup. And they couldn't find anything, and probably it was due to the increased estrogen progesterone levels, especially in my pregnancy. But I also, when I was very, very sick in the beginning, I really had a lot of right upper quadrant pain. I mean, I was doing castor oil packs, I was doing enemas, like I was just doing so much, and my gallbladder pain would always be there. And then part of it, I just couldn't tolerate any supplements and minerals and vitamins and things like that. They had to be very, very clean. And so that's how, my whole use came about of Global Healing Products. But beyond that, then as I started healing and as I started, I ended up doing 7 liver cleanses in a year, liver flushes. And again, mine were, I was under the care of a naturopathic doctor and they were kind of supervised by him. And so that really helped. So you always need to be under the supervision of a medical professional when you're doing those liver flushes. And he kind of guided me through it. And I ended up doing 7 that one year. And I think in the last year, I've probably done 2 more. And so that really helped me kind of get out a lot of those. I didn't have per se gallstones because it didn't show up on the ultrasound, but I had so much right upper quadrant pain that it kind of helped just break that stuff down, take it out. And so that was really helpful for me. So lately I've been feeling a little bit of a twinge again in my gallbladder, but I think that, I restarted some of that hormone replacement therapy. And so some of that stuff might be from that, but I have to be very, very diligent and purposeful about keeping my liver pathways open and just kind of detox pathways and things like that to really help with my liver and to not overburden my liver, especially because I am on very, very low dose of BHRT at this point. So that's what that statement was, David. I hope that explains and answers your question. It's not letting me put any links right now, but I will definitely put the 2 links for the articles and studies that were done. David also asks, I would love also to hear anything new about mitochondrial function if time allows, of course. Absolutely, David. Of course, this weekend I did my fifth module, which was bioenergetics, and it's really about mitochondria and energy production and functional medicine approach to that. And so, we really talked from the basics to really, really detailed stuff of the Krebs cycle and the pathways and things like that. But for those of you that are kind of new to this, and you've probably heard the term mitochondria and maybe in high school, maybe in college, thrown around a lot, but you probably heard it a lot more now as you've been sick or haven't been, in most optimal health, because the term mitochondrial disease is really thrown around quite a bit now, just like inflammation is thrown around quite a bit. So you might have heard, that your mitochondria are not functioning well, or you've got mitochondrial disease, things like that. So what are the mitochondria? As you know, they are the powerhouse of the cell. I mean, that's what we learned in high school and middle school and things like that. But it's basically, for each cell, it creates energy. It takes food and oxygen and converts it to ATP to generate energy. And that's what the mitochondria does. The functions of mitochondria are to produce energy, of course, but they also help with cell death, which is apoptosis, which is, any of the old cells or, disease cells. It helps kill those cells and produce new cells. So that's another function. It helps with calcium homeostasis to really keep the calcium balance. You don't want to have too much or too little. It helps regulate immunity, and then heat production and stem cell production. So really the mitochondria, play a big part in creating, maintaining, and destroying. And so they're very, very important from all aspects to, from healthy living to disease-free states to even helping in the end, the cell death. And so that's what really the mitochondria's function is. What are the factors that affect mitochondrial health then? So low oxygen supply, for whatever reason, your cells are not getting enough oxygen, poor glucose control and metabolism, if there's any disease process, any of those things that are affecting mitochondrial health, aging, really, really poor diet, all of those things will really affect mitochondrial health. So how do we heal the mitochondria? And now there's so much work being done on healing the mitochondria. What are the things that help on a day-to-day basis, week to week, month to month, short term, long term, all of that? And there's so much being done. And a lot of the focus for us was a lot on that, as far as the whole program. And so things like eating fewer calories. I mean, if you're binging and having so many calories per day, it's too much for your cells to keep up. It's too much for your mitochondria to constantly be producing energy to really break down that food, try to absorb all the nutrients from there. So it's a lot for your mitochondria. So, how do you heal your mitochondria? Eat fewer calories, eat in a specific window, time restricted eating. And so really eating in a very short window, so that your cells have enough time to clean up and take all the garbage out, regenerate, produce new mitochondria, produce new cells. If they're constantly just working on feeding, breaking down that food, creating energy, they don't have time for anything else. And then, of course, fasting is a big one. If you guys went back and listened to my story, you know that at my sickest time, when I was really, really sick, and for 2.5 years, I had tried everything and just nothing seemed to be working. Everything, I'd seen all kinds of conventional medicine specialists. I had worked with a SIRS doctor. I had worked with a functional medicine doctor. I mean, I had just been through the ringer for a couple of years and nothing was working. And so in my culture, fasting has been there for thousands of centuries. And so, I just felt like that was my only way out. And so I ended up doing medically supervised. I was supervised by a DO down in West Palm Beach, and I did a medically supervised water only fast. You definitely want to be supervised medically, or be under the watch of someone if you're doing a fast. And so I ended up doing a 6-day, and I think it was like 2 or 3 days of juicing, and I did a 6-day water only fast, and it was a game changer for me. Real game changer, because I think that my body finally after years of just being sick and years of eating all these extra calories and everything, was able to then really break down, take out all those disease and old cells and regenerate new cells. And I got so much better after that fast. I think I started my trajectory to healing about 40 to 50% better after that fast. So it was very, very helpful. And then, of course, the other way to heal mitochondria is your diet, eating very high protein sources, good protein sources like eggs and tofu, organic tofu and grass-fed meats and things like that. And then even eating a diet high in omegas. So, fish or nuts or seeds, anything that are high omegas is also very helpful for mitochondria. And then absolutely no refined carbs. That really, destroy all the homeostasis, and you'll have exposure to pesticides and high sugars and then insulin up and down and things like that. So no refined carbs like white flours and things like that. Exercise is really good in how to heal mitochondria, and we went through a bunch of studies this past weekend, where we learned about what happens to your body when you exercise, what happens to your mitochondria. And then they also talked about bioenergetic treatments and other treatments like acupuncture, red light therapy, which you guys have heard me talk about a lot. Cold therapy, they talked a lot about cold therapy, something that I've also mentioned quite a few times about, how when I was really sick and I started doing the hot cold plunges where I'd be in hot water and then in cold, ice cold water, that was a big factor for me in healing. And so that cold therapy really helps with, cleaning out the dead mitochondria and dead cells and regenerating new cells. And it helps, really, the cold therapy helps with brown fat cells, having more brown fat cells, which are rich in mitochondria. And so that is really helpful for healing. And then we also talked about things like meditation. They showed us studies of, like, with meditation, what happens to the oxidative stress. It reduces the oxidative stress. Relaxation, massage, all reduces oxidative stress. And so then that really helps with decreasing mitochondrial damage, decreasing, slowing down aging, things like that. We talked a lot about supplements that help with mitochondrial healing. I'll mention some of them here, but again, with all the supplements, you always want to be under the care of a medical professional who's helping you guide through these through the supplements, and making sure there's no interactions, making sure that you're not taking supplements for longer than you're supposed to, things like that. But we talked about supplements like vitamin C, vitamin E, CoQ10, CoQ10, ALA, L-carnitine. We talked about a bunch of supplements that really help with, healing the mitochondria, but also, just a really, really diet rich in fruits and vegetables. I put a couple of pictures up of Dr. Terry Walls, who was teaching us this weekend, and she recommends 8 cups of vegetables a day. And that's how she really healed herself. So, things like that are also very, very helpful to help with healing the mitochondria. So that's some of the basic stuff that we talked about, David. I hope that kind of answers a little bit of what you, were asking. Of course, we went a lot into detail, and we went a lot into specifics and enzymes and things like that. But I think that this is a good overview for you guys as you get to your healing journey. Sue asks, I'd be interested to know more about what he was saying. Sugar seems to be a huge trigger for pain and fatigue and other issues for me. So what Sue is talking about, and let me see if I can share my screen here. I had put up a couple of pictures. Let's see, share screen. Okay, so window. Okay, here we go. I had put up 2 pictures, and I'll see if I can get it up. So this was the first one that I had shared, and this is Dr. Hedaya. Phenomenal talks, and he taught us all, most of the weekend about anxiety, depression, like clinical implications and considerations for psychiatric patients. Just fantastic talks. But I had put this up on the group just to show you like how micronutrient balance has large effects on depression and anxiety. So he talked about this. He said, like, when he's treating patients with depression and anxiety, he goes down, this list, and he really makes sure that it's a all like multi-pronged approach, not just antidepressant meds or SSRIs, things like that. So he talked about how, all these things have a large effect, like steady glucose supply to the brain. If you have constant spikes up and down, you're going to have really a lot of issues with anxiety. So he talked about that and how you constantly need to be in a steady glucose supply, reduced HPA stress response, so people who really are reactive, who get very startled, that's usually a problem. Total caloric burden, if you're overeating your calories, too many calories, excess calories, that kind of stuff. He talked about how anti-inflammatory foods and spices, which, if you guys know, I put another image about all the different spices and how you incorporate them on a day-to-day basis. A lot of spices have so much effect on your mood and your anxiety levels and things like that. Even with memory, there's a lot of things that can help with memory. And then also he checks their microbiome, make sure they don't have a leaky gut, make sure that they have a good gut flora, diversity of vegetables and healthy fats, and then he individualizes it to the patient. And so that was one of the pictures that I had put up. And then the second one, let me see if I can do this again. The second one, which is the one that Sue was asking about, was this one. And so this one was how the sugar affects mood and anxiety. So large amounts of sugar, whether it's refined sugars or in your diet, in your ketchup, in your juices, whatever, but large amounts of sugar really has a negative effect on mood and anxiety. And, of course, I've talked a lot about this in a few of the previous, lives and things like that. But anytime that you have a high sugar and then a spike and then a drop, you are really affecting your insulin levels. And the more insulin you are producing, your body starts getting resistant to it. So it's insulin resistant. And so sugar really has a very negative effect on the brain. And the brain really needs a steady supply of energy. And every time you have these spikes and up and down, it's actually really negative for the brain, and so that creates more anxiety. He was talking about how he had patients who he had put them on like ketogenic diets or other diets, and once they had a steady supply of glucose and their blood sugars didn't fluctuate, they actually did not have any anxiety attacks or panic attacks. And so that was really helpful to learn that from a medical perspective, how sugar really affects mood and anxiety. The other thing he said is sugar decreases BDNF. BDNF is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and that's the stuff that helps your hippocampus grow bigger, and that makes you happier, makes you better decisions. So when you have so much sugar, you're really decreasing BDNF, and then you're causing very detrimental, harmful, and almost irreversible damage to the brain. Sugar also increases pro-inflammatory cytokines. So, of course, now with COVID, everybody's heard about cytokine storm and like what that is. And so when you have sugar in your diet, you really increase the pro-inflammatory cytokines, which then cause so much inflammation, even in your brain. And so that really is dangerous for your brain. And then, of course, for your mood and depression and anxiety and things like that. It increases utilization of B vitamins when you have a diet that is rich in sugar. And so then your body doesn't have B vitamins, which you really need for brain development, for mood, for energy. High sugar diets stresses the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is the one that is the rest and digest, like it just keeps you calm, things like that. And so you really don't want to have too much sugar in your diet. It inhibits Krebs cycle function. Krebs cycle is how the mitochondria produce energy. And so it really inhibits that in some patients. And so you can see that, sugar really has very detrimental effects, especially when it's in your diet. And sadly, the SAD diet now, as a standard American diet, is just, it's full of sugar. It's processed foods, and so it really is very harmful, not only for people who are trying to heal from chronic illnesses, but even for healthy adults as they think more about long term and longevity and things like that. So that's what I was referring to, Sue, and I had put up that picture. I thought it was a great picture, and it was just really very explanatory about what sugar does. In this case, of course, sugar has many, many harmful effects, but in this case, for mood and anxiety and irritability and depression and things like that. So those are the only questions that we had for today, for this week. If you have any other questions, I will post another image on Thursday or Friday. Feel free to comment underneath there and ask as many questions as you want, and I will try to get to as many as I can. But that's about it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we will touch base again next Tuesday. Take care. Bye-bye.